So I'm extremely happy to welcome Eleonore Poli to the session. A little bit about Eleonore, I already shared it in our WhatsApp group, but she's a postdoctoral researcher in additive manufacturing. And while doing her PhD at the University of Cambridge, she joined several organizations, and the Global Shapers is one of them, and founded several projects. She is an analog astronaut, and she had to learn public speaking and is now a prolific public speaker. She just told she did 12 talks this year already, so quite impressive. I also share with you the TED Talk, where we also could learn what an analog astronaut actually is. And yeah, enough from my side. I hand it over to Eleonore, and yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? I guess that's a yes. Perfect. Let me just start. Okay, cool. So I'm really excited to be here. Sometimes I talk really quickly, which is not great when you're a public speaker, but hopefully you can understand correctly. And I'm also going to apologize. I'm very tired. So if I stumble a bit, it's normal, but that's actually something that you have to do as a public speaker, is sometimes crack a joke or, say how things are going to be. So yeah, about myself, I did do my PhD in material science, and I'm really lucky because I've been interested all my life in a lot of things, and I never thought public speaking would be actually part of, not really my job. It's not really my job to be a public speaker, but it's part of a lot of activities I have to do. And as Maxi actually mentioned, public speaking is absolutely crucial. There's social media, there's, photos, there's text, but in the end, it's just getting out there and talking that makes a big difference. And for me, the way I got really started was the Global Shapers, but also working in the space sector, being an analog astronaut, that got me into public speaking. So while I was preparing this, I was thinking, am I really the right person to teach you about public speaking? I mean, I'm quite new to this, only about a few years. I've started doing more and more talks and, being on stage, etc. So I started making a list of what I've been through, and there's so many different experiences you can get in public speaking. It's not about just doing a TED talk. It can be part of it, but actually some people give TED talks and they're really, really bad speakers. If you listen to my TED talk, I was absolutely awful because I was the studio recording. It was the third take. I was exhausted, and it was actually one of the first time I was giving a talk like this. Since then, I've actually been on the Youth Swiss forums in front of like 200 people. I've done several podcasts. I did video interviews where I'm interviewing people. I'm being recorded while somebody interviews me. I've been on national TV and radio in Switzerland. I had commissioned talks, like last night I had one in German. I had commissioned talks in Romania last month. I've done webinars, podcasts, blah, 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 blah. And I've done it in 3 different languages. So it's really interesting because I can give you a bit of insight in giving a talk in your own language and giving talks in a foreign language. I'm really lucky also that I was able to give talks in a lot of topics. I'm interested in a lot of stuff. And the thing is, I love talking, which means that I can talk about, careers in STEM. That's, what we do usually for women, about smart diaspora. That was one of the themes of my talk last month. Sustainability, that was when I was in Shapers, material science, space, health, whatever. And it's really interesting because depending on the topic, the way you're going to talk, you're going to have to adapt. So how did I start? The first step was actually within the Shapers, and I'm talking about my path because maybe you can take some similar steps. When I started the Global Shapers, I started the Eco Fashion Project, and then COVID started. So one ways that we were thinking of doing the project was to have different webinars. And we needed a host. So I became host for some of the webinars. So I learned how to interview, how to take time, how to record. Then I had classes on public speaking for the Astronaut mission, which was the analog space mission I took part in. And the reason we had those public speaking classes were because the Astronaut mission was fully sponsored and funded. So to get that money, we needed outreach. And in space missions, you guys probably don't know the name of engineers for any Apollo missions or anything. Why? Because you only see the astronauts. That's the point. In analog space missions, it's the same thing. So the astronauts are the image. They really the points. They need to be talking because they get the cash in. So we had to learn how to do public speaking, and it was very interesting because we had professional classes, maybe I think 3 hours, something like that. We were a fantastic speaker, and we did exercises, you know, with the mouth or whatever. And a few months later, about 6 months later, when we had the mission, we were standing in front of our base, and there's a bus coming in, and it's filled with journalists. And they climb out and they don't even say hi, and they've got like the photographs and the microphone, and they just ask you questions. And you like, I was really glad to have the mask because it was still doing COVID, because that way they couldn't see that I was like, like this under the mask, you know. I was absolutely freaking out. And then as soon as they started talking to me, I realized it was okay. Journalists are not really there to annoy you or find stuff like bad stuff to say about you, except if you, I don't know, a superstar, a top model, something like this. Most times when they come and talk to you, they want to hear your story and they want to learn interesting facts. So you just have to think it's really chill. You can ask them, okay, do you want me to walk down here? Do you want me to step there? Can you see me well? Do you want a bit more light? Kind of accommodate and put it to an equal ground, basically. They're doing their job, you're doing your job, and it kind of makes it easier. And then after that, I started doing interviews with some really friendly people, I did podcasts, and then I moved into like national TV and that kind of thing. And it was also very, very interesting. When I say national TV, I was interviewed while inside a base. I wasn't on a TV set, luckily, because I think that would be very stressful. And I don't have enough to talk about to actually be on a national TV set. But basically what really helped me, and what would help you when you start giving talks and you want to do public speaking, is that you start slowly. Like everything in life, it's that you do baby steps. And if you don't feel confident enough to give a full talk, you first start with interviewing someone, you know, or maybe you don't want to be focusing on a camera, just start with a podcast. Start slow, get confidence, and get used into the public. I was luckily used to public performance because I've been playing the piano since I was a kid. And I remember I was so stressed when I would go on stage, like my hands were shaking, which did not always help with the piano playing. And the day I started stressing when I did piano performances was the day I realized I was doing that for myself. And it's the same for talks. You're doing this because you enjoy it and because you can bring something to others. Others don't necessarily hear your mistakes. Others don't really see the full picture. You're here to perform, you're here to give something, but you also take something back, okay? So sometimes performing with an instrument can give you a bit of training for your public speaking. And then the really big thing that helped me was when I realized that the talks I was giving actually made sense. It helped people. It can be really dumb. It can be simply that you show representation. It can be that you talk about a subject that's important. It can be that you give the crucial information. When you give, for example, advice on careers, when I gave advice to you today, maybe I'm helping one of you get a step further. And if I help one of you, I already won. I already made a difference. And just for that, it's worth learning how to public speak. All of us have fantastic things to share. It doesn't mean you need to be a genius, the best athlete. No, it can be simply that you want to crack a joke and make somebody laugh. If you made somebody laugh, you already made a difference, okay? So when you're thinking about giving a talk, think about that. You're there to make a difference, and it doesn't need to be a mountain. Just about being human, sharing to somebody else. And obviously, the bigger the crowd, the more people you can actually impact. Okay, and I mean, the shapers and voices is all about making an impact, isn't it? Public speaking is one of the best ways to make an impact, because after all, human beings love shows, you know. So, so I hope you can see my slides correctly. Normally, I think with Zoom, you guys shouldn't be able to see that I can see all your faces and not read my slides. Fantastic. So first step, imagine tomorrow, I tell you in 2 months, you're giving a talk. You need to know your crowd. Are these going to be kids? And how old are these kids? They're going to be 8 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old. They're going to be adults. Are they going to be professionals? Are they going to be in STEM? For example, yesterday I was giving a talk to the construction continental school. So the average age was about 50 years old, mostly a technical background, but very down to earth background. So it meant that I couldn't use necessarily extremely high level technical terms in material science, but they still understood some basics of material science. This is not the case for the whole public. Then they usually over 50, which means I'm not going to talk like I would talk to kids. You shouldn't be saying boo baboo for kids, but you need to use very simple terms, and you need to inspire them, and you need to keep talks very short when you're talking to kids. With adults, it's a bit different, okay? So really just think, how old are they? What are they doing there also? Are they there to listen to you? Are you an entertainer? Are you the clown at the end of the supper? Are you the opener? Basically, what are you doing there, okay? And for whom are you doing this? Then don't overdo the slides. On these ones, I'm writing a lot of stuff because it's a class that you can reuse later. So I thought, you know, maybe I'll write a bit more. Normally, I just pick like really nice pictures, and maybe I put a few catchy words, okay? This is usually what works best, is that you really just keep it simple, keep it impressive in the slides. Don't do complicated schematics, don't put too many colors, and try to stay in a theme, okay? Because you don't want people to be distracted from your voice. You want them to be listening to you, you want them to follow you, and the image is there to kind of impress your opinion, okay? And what's very interesting is also if you can time things. So you can put a comical effect. I guess you haven't looked at the TED talk, but if you did, for example, at some point I made a transition where I talk about mistakes. And when I do that, I switch to a picture of me sliding in ice and breathing and looking like a walrus, because it's funny, you know, but I had to really time it. And this is something that you can do when you have very simple slides. If the slides are complicated, people are going to start reading and they're going to lose on that effect, okay? So yeah, just really simple slides, 1-2 pictures. Some people don't even need them. In that case, you're going to need to really make sure that you're you're speaking like your Aussprechung is absolutely perfect. Okay. Then rehearse. So for example, for today, I didn't rehearse much, but I did prepare the slides a few days before. And before coming here today, I read through it, so I knew, okay, where's my red line? When you do public speaking, you're trying to conduct a red line. We use that expression in German, we use that expression in French. It's really just showing that your story follows something. It's not just jumping and then it doesn't make sense. You need to progressively tell a story. When you prepare a TED talk, they then go a bit further and they try to really make people start imagining from the start. And I think it's really difficult because at the beginning, people are a bit stressed and apprehensive. So I don't think people manage to jump into the dream with you. So sometimes cracking a joke is the best way to get the story started, is that you get the attention and then you can start working from that joke and get to the point that you want to do, okay? But rehearsing is important. The talk I had yesterday, for example, because it was in German, I had to actually learn quite a bit, because the problem is not that I can't talk German. The problem is I make 20 mistakes a second with all the articles. And that means people are distracted. They hear me make the mistake and they're going to be just correcting. And it takes them away from the talk. So by learning those articles by heart and not making a mistake, then I remove the pressure for me to be thinking, and I remove the pressure for them to be thinking also. Also, think about some words. Some words you're probably not going to pronounce them correctly. If you're not sure, just go on Google or just ask a native speaker. Ask them, how do I say that word? And then you just say it 20 times. Like I had to say herausforderung. It was really difficult. So I was just before, I was just warming up and doing herausforderung. And I probably still say it wrong, but at least I can say it. I'm not stumbling when I say it. So do this and make sure that you articulate, because it helps you also warm up. And speaking of it, warming up. Sorry, it's a very big slide. This is actually a really important slide. So pay attention, or there's a test later on. No, joking. There's actually for Maxi, but you know. So your vocal cords, they're a bit like a muscle, and also your lips, okay? Sometimes you're going to get a bit tired, so make sure you do like exercises like this. So some people, for example, in the theater, I think they say rose, there's a rose, there's a rose, there's a rose. it's a sort of warm up, and it's also funny, and it's a way to get you into it. I usually just pick the hardest words and then rehearse them again and again. And then sometimes I'll be like, me, hello, my name is, a bit like Eminem. Any kind of thing that helps you warming up and making sure you got the full range, okay? And if you're saying it in a different language, be also aware that the way your mouth is going to move is going to be different than your native language. So if you've been speaking English the whole day and then you're going to give your talk in French, you need to rehearse partly in French. You need to warm up in French, okay? Make sure everything is awake and there. And then the musicality. I don't know if you have seen The King's Speech, and I love that movie. And it's about I think it was King George V, who had a speech impediment. And he has a doctor, well, not a doctor, but basically an assistant that helps him get over his speech impediment, because he has to give a speech which is starting the Second World War. Okay, so it's the most important speech that he has to give. And he uses music to do it. And it's a bit the same. Basically, your talk will sing. Okay, you need to be thinking, where does it go up and where does it go down? Where do you make breaks and where does it sound nice? Okay, see that there you could probably put a bit of music on this. It's really the same. So really think about, where does it go up? Where are you taking your break? Where are you breathing? Where are you emphasizing a word? And also, when are you speeding and when are you stopping? I really love thinking about them as pieces of melody, and it's quite funny because I prepare them the same way I would prepare a piece of music, actually. So speaking of this, for example, on the left, that was my talk from yesterday. And what I do is I have the slides. So that's only when I have to learn something about art. So I did that for my TED talk, and I did that for this talk yesterday. Normally for like today, I know what I'm going to be talking about. I don't need to get the exact words because it's going to be easy to find them. And you guys are not there to listen to exactly the words I'm saying. You're here to get the meaning, but you don't care if I'm using Shakespearean language, okay? So what I did is I write here the text, and then, for example, I'm underlining what's important. Here I put, for example, some breaks. If I write it on my paper, it would be looking like this, for example, and then I would be like putting an arrow to say I'm going down, and then this would be like another break. This would be, for example, I'm making gestures. So alles braucht Training. Musik, Sport, Wissenschaft, Sprachen. So I'm using my hands and I'm putting notes for me. And same way, like when I play the piano, I'm putting, numbers, I'm putting where's it crescendo, where's mezzo forte. It's the same, really. So you can really annotate your talks. And I think it really helps because it helps in making your talk yours, okay? You can also use some music to help with that. So when I was saying before that you need to understand what you're doing, you also need to enjoy it. So when you think about why you're doing it, are you here to inspire people? Or are you here because you need to sell your product? Or are you here because you love your company and you want to recruit new people? Okay, so just think, why are you there today? If you're giving a talk and you don't want to, it's probably because you're doing your PhD and you got your Viva or something like that. But that was still 3 to 4 to 5 years of your life. Okay, you still did this. It was still your baby. It was still something that you cherished and something that you chose to do. So think about what was enjoyable and then go for it and try to really express it. People really don't like unemotional talks, okay? Unless you're using, for example, very dark humor, then it works. But somebody who's just monotonous, like, yeah, and I did a PhD and it was so, and then I did material science. No, nobody listens to that. Like I can just use a robotic voice and I can speed it to 1.5 so that I can get rid of it quicker, okay? Put emotions in it. An example that I found very interesting, I studied in Swiss Germany, and Swiss Germany, we have much more of an accent. It's actually very, very strange compared to German. And for me as a non-German speaker, I preferred Swiss German teachers because they sang much more and they had to really make an effort. So it was like, so it was easier for me to stay awake in classes than in German, where it was a bit more monotonous, a bit more flat, but that depends again where in Germany. But in Switzerland, it was so emphasized, it was so musical, that for somebody who already had troubles understanding, it really helped me in staying awake. Okay. Then again, just think about your crowds. I had to give some talks, for example, for girls and try to get them inspired in STEM. And one thing that I found incredible, because I usually don't enjoy being asked to be a speaker just because I'm a woman. I want to be asked to be a speaker because I've got the relevant experience, you know, because I'm a good engineer or something like that. So when I get asked to sometimes give talks to inspire young girls, I wouldn't necessarily understand. And then one day I gave a talk and I had a young lady in front of me. She was about 24, 25 years old, and she was studying psychology, and she told me she would have loved to study engineering. And I asked her why, and she said, because I never met somebody like you who did material science, who did engineering, who dared to do something that was different from society. So my point is, you never know the impact that you're going to have on people, but you can think a little bit about it and think, well, okay, that person might really benefit from it. Okay. Think about also when you were a kid, what helped you to go a bit further, and can you return the favor? Then the easiest thing is to really pick a subject you're passionate about. If somebody asks you a general theme, you know, for example, you want to talk about sustainability, don't pick a theme in sustainability that you know nothing about and you're not passionate about. You can pick something you don't know a lot. Then you need to do a lot of research, make sure you're confident about what you're talking about. But in general, just take something that you really enjoy. Okay. If you have to give talks all the time and you don't like what you're doing, then you know it's not going to work. It's not going to be sustainable. You're going to be stressed. You're going to have to force yourself. It's not going to come out easy. Okay. And then try to look at a few people. You don't stay fixated on one person, like your mom, your dad, your sister, whatever. Try to pick 3 or 4 points where people seem to be smiling or attentive, and then you rotate between those people. Okay, so you look at them and then you turn around, you look at that other person, and you can also kind of think how attentive they are. And if you see that they starting to look a bit away, then you can raise your voice a bit, kind of call back the attention. But it's also very good feedback, because then you can think, oh, they were really, really attentive. That part, you could see they were slouching off. It's probably because I was a bit too slow or I wasn't clear enough. And then don't think that you are giving the talk, okay? Don't think, oh, the next part is this, the next part is that. Am I talking loud? Am I talking this? No, it needs to be very much organic, okay? You are in the talk, you are giving the talk. You see the response and you improve on it, but you're not thinking, oh my God, this is my TED Talk. Oh my God, this is my TED Talk, okay? Before my TED Talk, I almost threw up. I literally had 10 minutes where I was white as a sheet, and I couldn't like really talk to people. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to throw up on the carpet. It's going to be fantastic. Best talk ever, right? And as soon as you're up there, then you remember your training and you get in your talk and you forget, you know, you go and you do the thing you trained for months or weeks or days or seconds, whatever you had to. But basically you are in the moment. You're not thinking about, oh, I'm going to have lunch after, what time is it? No, you give your talk. When you give podcasts an interview, because maybe some of you are not going to be doing public speaking in like in front of 200 people, maybe you just want to do some small things, or you want to get started with the small things, which is what I would recommend. Make sure to not interrupt. There's just kind of some podcast etiquette and interview etiquette. The problem is there's often a bit of an overlap on people talking, and it can cut what you want to do. And if you really want to make an impact, it's good that you take your time, make sure that people can hear you well, that it's not being covered by somebody else's voices, and that you thought about it. And there you can really pick up some really interesting answers and some words. You want people to remember what you said. And you have time, really. It doesn't need to be talking over someone. Sometimes it can make it a bit more authentic and fun. But most of the times it just ends up being a jumble, and you're like, oh, what did that person say? Okay. And mostly be yourself. Like if you're on the show, it's because somebody wanted you there, because you either have the knowledge or the personality that make you present. So be yourself. Don't try to transform into somebody else. okay? Especially if you try to be somebody else, unless you're an actor, like you're going to stress and you're going to be just not fun to listen to, okay? Share your stories, and worst case, if you're being absolutely awful, we could just cut you, right? But if you were not yourself either, you wouldn't be interesting to listen to. Now, when you learn, for example, a talk by heart, you can also use this for any talk, but usually if you know what you're talking about, you don't need to time yourself every time. You don't need to rewrite everything. This is really the hardcore method when you have a talk and it needs to be spot on. Like, for example, TED Talks, they give you really a limit, and then you have to do the rehearsal in front of people, then they need to approve it, and then you need to rehearse it, and then you need to do the audio version, and then you need to do the live version, and you need to give them the exact timing. So you don't really have the chance, like I have today, of being really flexible on time, and I can take 10 minutes more, 5 minutes more, you know, nice and chill. No, you need to be spot on. And to be spot on, normally you're going to need to learn by heart, because it's very unlikely you're going to take exactly the same time. So time yourself. And one way to do it is, for example, count how many slides you have. Don't put too many slides. Don't put 20 slides. Don't put 30 slides unless it's really all nice pictures. But even so, I would say better have 10 slides and spend 3-4 minutes on it than have 30 slides and just be like flying through it, and then you have to say, oh, that was what I was learning, that was what I was learning, that was what I was saying, because it also interrupts and it takes people outside of that red line. Okay, you need to think that you're trying to project an image in people's mind. So you pick a slide and you tell a part of the story, okay, and the story builds up, the story builds up, the story builds up. And then if I switch right away to the next slide, then you remove that and the people have to do with the process again, okay? So really just take time and think maybe 10, 12 slides, and I'll put 3-4 minutes on each of those slides. Maybe 20 slides if I've got 1 hour, but not much more than this, so that people can really remember a few. People have poor memories also. Like, you have to think the average person is just not going to remember a lot. I was going to be thinking, oh, I wanted that muffin that's on the table next door. Yesterday was awful. They had beer on the table. I was like, they're never going to listen to me. Like, they're going to look at the beer the whole time. Luckily, they had aperol just before, so at least they weren't hungry. But I was like, oh my God, they put beer on the table. Nobody's going to want that, right? But the thing is, I had really kick-ass images, and that really helped. Okay. And then rewrite until it feels authentic. When you first write your talk, like I did, for example, on the picture before, where you have the slides and then I have the text I need to learn by heart. The first time you write it, it's not going to be the sentence you're going to use. You're going to change some words, because we all write differently than we speak. It doesn't mean it should be, you know, rude or low vocabulary, but it needs to be accessible to you. It needs to be something that you would be able to say spontaneously, or that you could learn easily. If it's a word that's not something that you use regularly and that you don't really understand, it's going to be terrible. And that's why you shouldn't make it too complicated. Don't take like words you've never seen before, no swear words, or not too much depending on the crowd, you know, but really try to make it yourself and rewrite it and speak it up. So you take, for example, one slide, and then you take your phone and you time yourself, and then you say what you've written, and then you see, when you replay it again, think, oh, I wanted to use that word, actually it's a bit more accessible, it's a bit friendlier, it fits better, and the full. And then you rewrite, and then you rewrite, and you do that several times until you know your talk almost by heart. One trick I use a lot, but again, it's because I really think that talks are like music, is to learn while you're listening to music. You're going to hate your voice. You're going to be really self-conscious when you learn it. You're going to be stressed. You're like, oh my God, and then my throat is dry. You're going to be thinking about the talk while you're giving the talk when you rehearse. You don't want that. So one cool trick is just, you put headphones on and you put music. And the added bonus is if you put some music that can be a bit, I don't know, motivating, you know, like some classical music with a big build up, or even I use like techno that has some really nice emotional bits. It helps me in taking the momentum. It makes me emphasize stuff, and then I can project myself giving the talk and saying this thing with a lot of strength and a lot of motivation and conviction. So pick up some music that do this, and what you can do is once you've picked the song you want to use for that, you put it in rehearse, you do all your talk on that, and when you go to your talk, when you warm up or when you're on a train or whatever, put that music back. What it's going to do is it's going to revert you back to when you've been training to this, and it's going to put your brain into that condition. Okay, so basically you condition yourself into saying, I'm in talk mode. This is what I did. You're not back at work, you're not on your bike, you're not with friends, you are in your talk. This is your talk music, you are in your bubble, and you're ready, you're going to be fine, you're focused, and you can you know, pick up the emotions that you created when you were doing that. And then you can record what you did. I have a writing memory. So yesterday on the train to work, before I was going to give my talk, I just looked at the slides one last time, and then I started writing everything by heart. And I was like, this is what I was writing. Then I would compare with the talk I first wrote. And I knew that if I could write it, then it would be fully in my mind, because I've got this writing memory. And if I could spit it back again, then I knew it was all there. You can also record yourself so that you can either give it to other people to listen. The best would be that you actually rehearse in front of people, but that sometimes can get annoying, especially when you have 13 talks. You're just not gonna like rehearse in front of everyone. They're gonna hate you for that. But like, record yourself and then listen and see where you could change the intonation. And if you don't want to listen to that recording, you can. Sometimes it's just about forcing yourself to make the effort. It's like when you play music and you tell yourself, today I'm filming it. Suddenly you're going to have the pressure that you have to do it right. You're not going to do it right completely, but you're going to try your best. And that's what you want to do. You really want to try to push yourself until it works. Then the body movements. So as you can see, I can move a lot. I've got really old computers, so my camera is awful, but you don't really need to see my face too much. But when you've got a talk on a stage, your body movement is super important. Personally, I hate people who are behind podiums. And a few weeks back, I was at a space conference, and the best speakers were the ones that were like pacing on the stage or doing weird mimics, and you know, like, and the ones that were behind the post like this, and I could barely see them. It just, I don't know, you can't really focus, even if they don't really talk badly. It's just there's a dimension missing. So on the TED talk, it's quite funny because they've got this red circle, like it's really kind of the trademark. And what I would do is I would use a triangle pattern. It's a detail, you guys do whatever you want. But what's really good with the triangle pattern is that you've got 2 points in front where you can walk to. So you can walk and emphasize a point towards 1% of the crowd. Then you can keep on the same level, and then you can come back when you want to diminish your point and you want to lower the volume. And then you can come back on the other side and you look at the other point of the crowd. Remember the friendly crowd, you know, the 4 points or 5 points of people that you're going to look at. You look at them when you're on one point, and you look at the others when you're on the other point. And that helps because you're moving, but you're not doing a movement that's complicated. Your brain doesn't have to say, oh, you have to do a WSY or something. No, you're doing a triangle. It's natural. It's easy. You stay in the circle, which means cameras can film you, or people know where you are. They don't have to think, where's the speaker? Okay. And you use everything. You use your arms, you use your face, you use your fingers, and it really helps. It helps you really emphasizing. Try, however, not to put your hands in front of your mouth. A lot of people use lip reading, even if they're not deaf. It's normal. We use that to read the full expression and to understand when maybe the sound isn't that good. So don't do the whole talk like this, because then you're gonna have a big problem, okay? So it's really, really important. And really try to stress some points. So for example, in my TED talk, I would say, this, or then usually I'm doing movements like that. And actually I've got a cool slide for you guys so you can make fun of me. But for every talk I have, I look like a dumbass. There's always like at least one picture that you can put on 9gag because I'm a meme, because my face is extremely volatile and moving all around. So these are the almost good ones, but I can tell you I've got really pictures on like this. And at the beginning I would feel ashamed and thinking, oh my God, like that's what people see. But actually the point is it helps. It helps because I'm making the movement, I'm illustrating, and people can then remember some gestures. Again, you're trying to stress a point, okay? So you associate those mimics until it works. And don't hesitate to use your slides, don't hesitate to use some objects, not too many, but really try to be illustrative. The bit annoying part of public speaking, what I would call the admin. I don't know how many of you, we're going to talk about this a bit later and see if we've got questions, but in public speaking, there can be quite a bit of preparation and some annoying stuff that goes with it. So start preparing early would be my first advice. I got the talk call for yesterday, 9 months ago. That was so sweet of them to book me 9 months ago. Normally it's about 2 weeks or a month, 6 months tops that you get. But if you get the call and you got an email saying, okay, can you give a talk on this, already start thinking of the skeleton, okay? Why? Because you're going to want to go through several iterations. As I mentioned, you're going to think first of maybe the size of the theme. You're going to think about that red line. And then you're going to start banging more and more on them. What kind of words you're going to use? What's going to be, how are you going to make the gestures? How's going to be the music in your piece, okay? So the earlier you prepare, the better. So for example, for the talk today, what happened is I got told in February I would give a talk, and I thought it was about 10-15 minutes intervention. And then 2 weeks ago, Maxi and I got on a call, and then I realized it was more about like an hour. So the thing I did was on the train right after, I just created all the slides. Then the next day I looked into the color codes for the voices, and I matched my slides with the color code of the voices, check this, sent it to Maxi, then we were good, you know? And then today I just had to reread a bit and think of some examples. I knew I had the talk yesterday, and I was thinking, if it goes wrong, I'm going to have some good examples for you guys. And if it goes well, I'm going to have some good examples for you guys. Okay. But at least I didn't have to do everything last minute and be stressed. Okay. And people have different memories. So maybe it's going to take you a long time to learn your talk, or maybe you've got a very good memory. It's going to be 5 seconds. The point is you want to have the choice of being prepared. So start easy. Uncomplicated files, don't bring 20 videos, because most times when you connect, the sound system is bad, or I don't know, maybe they don't have the right extension. If you have, always export a PowerPoint and a PDF. Why a PDF? Because that works with every computer. So for example, you have a Mac and you need another one, it's okay. If they don't have the license for PowerPoint, you can always play a PDF. The best is if you have PowerPoint, but always have both files, have them ready. Have your computer with you in case, have your charger. Also show up early. You warm up, make sure you've got water with you, that all of your devices are ready. And then also for the questions, you can prepare for a few of them, but be also ready that you might have questions that you can't answer to, and that's actually okay. If you try to answer a question weirdly or wrongly, that's probably not going to end well, okay? That actually discredits you. So you can always say, I don't know, or I'm not the right person to answer that question, or I'm sorry, could you refer to it later, or this is too personal. You're also allowed to say that, okay? If somebody asks you a very personal question, it's okay. And that's actually something that's very interesting. Next week, I'm interviewing someone, and she wants to go to Mars, and she has a baby. And I asked her, are you okay with me asking you family questions? Because that question might come up in the public, and I rather it comes from me saying, would you take your kid with you to Mars? And she was like, I want my family to be outside of the pictures. I don't want to be anyone to mention that. And that's really good. So this is something that you have to also do when you're doing public speaking. If you're interviewing someone, you check with them what is outside of the boundaries and not. And it's the same for yourself. When you're the one giving the talk, you have to also say, well, no, I don't want to talk about that, okay? Financial retribution. you can receive a lot of money for talks. Some people get paid 5,000, 10,000. I personally don't ask for money because it's not my main job. I'm really lucky to have a job on the side. I love doing it. And also I think it's a wonderful occasion for people to learn about careers, learn about space. A lot of the talks I give are to promote my own projects and help my own career. So for the moment, it's not necessary for me. What's nice is a lot of them pay for the hotel or the restaurant. So that's what I would recommend that you do, is like if you're moving somewhere to give a talk, then you can accept that. But the thing is, if you don't ask for money, then you get more talks and you get a lot of experience and you get to see amazing crowds. It's not because somebody can pay you 10,000 that they're a good crowd. Usually it just means, you know, container and maybe some drunk people are going to listen to you. Okay. Sometimes it's going to be something very important. But the thing is, when you give talks for free or just for the accommodation, you get to meet students, you get to meet kids, you get to meet initiatives that don't have a lot of money, but they have a lot of heart and potential. Okay. So that's my, you know, recommendation, but that's different for everybody. And also depends if that's going to be your job. If that's going to be your job, you can't say no, right? You need to eat tomorrow. I have the luxury of having another job. This is just something I do for fun because I think it's important. So it's fine. And then registering yourself on a speaker's platform. It's really fun, actually. It's from the Global Shapers. Elisa, I think she's not anymore in Voices, she once recommended Speakerinnen. Speakerinnen is basically a form for women, and they can register and say, this is my old talks, or I have experience in that talk, and you can say which languages you can give talks. If you're happy to travel to give your talk, if you want to interview, if you prefer podcasts, if you prefer being alone, then you can put all the specificities and what are your areas of interest, and then you send this and people come contact you. So yeah, that was it. But I think now I would love to hear from all of you, maybe what kind of experiences you have. Also, if you think that I've missed anything, maybe some of you have some very different tricks to learn your talks. Maybe you're learning just with images, you have more like a visual imagination, or maybe you had some really bad experience you like to ask advice on. Again, we also all very different. So the methods I use might not work for you, but they're usually quite broad. Like I used a lot of different methods. So I do hope that at least one of them is going to work and that this was useful for all of you. And that's the end of my talk.
Well, thank you so much, Eleonore. There are already a couple of questions.